Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mark, for that kind introduction. I love the video, and I also want to commend you and the team for once again investing so much care and dedication into planning an amazing summit this year with so many talented individuals in this room. You have managed over the last 7.5 years to make the Campbell Trophy Summit the must-attend event in the Silicon Valley and, quite frankly, in the country. Now, I've shared this before for those who've heard me speak. Every single year, we get phone calls from people saying, how can I buy a ticket to come and hang out with these individuals and to hear these speakers? But that's what makes this event special. You can't buy your way into the Campbell Trophy Summit. You have to earn it. And that's what each and every one of you has done. So in celebration of your accomplishments and in service to your continued pursuit of excellence, they have put together an amazing agenda for you today, tomorrow. You're going to have a chance to hear from some of the world's greatest leaders. You're going to get a chance to learn from some of the greatest leaders sitting in this room, your peers. You're going to have a chance to learn some new skills, to practice hands-on training. And perhaps most of all, you're going to have some camaraderie and some competitive fun. It promises to be a mix of inspiration and perspiration. For those who knew Bill Campbell, that's exactly the way he wanted to have designed this program. Bill was one of a kind. Bill left everyone in this world that he touched better than he found us. And I want to spend the next few minutes sharing with you some of the greatest leadership lessons I learned from my mentor and my coach and my friend, Bill Campbell. Now, Bill was many things to many people. He was an amazing son, brother, a father, a husband, a friend, but perhaps most of all, Bill was a coach. He was a coach first on a football field. He was a coach in the Silicon Valley boardrooms, but he was also a coach in the way he lived his life and the example he set for the rest of us. And you all know the power of a coach, both good and bad. And if you have a great coach, they can transform who you are and the impact you're going to have on the rest of the world. So I'm going to share with you 5 leadership lessons that Bill Campbell instilled in me. I call these the 5 principles of leadership, or the 5 Ps. And I'll start first with potential. Bill was fond of saying, you do not, as a leader, you do not have to put greatness into your people. The Almighty already took care of that for you. Your job is to create an environment or find the right position for that person's greatness to shine through. Bill wanted every single person to remain authentic to who they were because he knew they already had a superpower inside of them. And he viewed it as his job of unleashing that potential. In fact, when I first met Bill, he said to me, when I see you, I see 2 people. The person you are today and the person that you're capable of being. And my job is to introduce those 2 people. Now, Bill was a coach, and if you remember the famous quote from Coach Tom Landry, he said, a coach is someone who tells you what you don't want to hear, who shows you what you don't want to see, so that you can always be the person you knew you could be. So it wasn't always love with Bill, but it was coaching with a good intent to help you be the best that you could be. Now, what I learned about unleashing potential came from how Bill ran all of his one-on-ones. And it's changed the way I've done one-on-one meetings in all of my settings in the Silicon Valley and in my newest chapter, and I hope you take a lesson from this. I would go in, like most of us, about to have a one-on-one with a supervisor or a coach or a mentor, and I would have a list of the things that I had accomplished since the last time we met, and I'd have 2 or 3 things I was struggling with that I wanted to ask Bill about, and he would stop me. And he would say, wait, I want to start with your personal growth. The last time we talked, these were the things you were working on. I want to know how you feel you've been doing in that area and where you think you're falling short, and how can I be helpful? And it always hit me. Bill wanted to start with people first, projects second. And every single time that I met with Bill for 15 years, he refused to jump into the business without first talking about the person. And this reminded me of the most important lesson Bill would teach. People do not care what you know until they know that you care. Unleashing potential in everyone he touched. Which takes me to the second P, purpose. There is an amazing quote by Joan Chittister. She says, the purpose of leadership is not to make the present bearable, it's to make the future possible. Now, to do that, you have to have a grand vision, a purpose, something that's almost unattainable. And if you really do it right, a purpose needs to be more than any one individual can accomplish on their own. It needs to be something that a collective group of people can do. In fact, there's a quote that says, if your dreams can be achieved alone, you're not dreaming big enough. And that's what Bill would inspire in everyone he talked to. What is your purpose? What is the big thing that you're collectively going after? Now, a purpose is different from a goal. We're all taught in leadership classes a goal needs to have 5 attributes. It needs to be SMART. So it needs to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. And those are good for goals, but not for a purpose. A purpose is an ideal state that verges on being unattainable, that not only you, but generations after you will continue to pursue. And in fact, for those of you in private industry, it's often referred to as an ideal state. Google's ideal state, to organize the world's information, and when you log into Google, they want to give you one right answer every time. So when you talk to Google, Larry and Sergey, who started right here on this campus, they view all those other options that you see on a Google search page as a bug. And they are on a quest that one day, when you start to type in a question, you get one right answer every time. Jeff Bezos, when he started Amazon in '93, had a goal to be the Earth's largest retailer. And to do that, he wanted to ensure he had the broadest selection, the lowest prices, and the fastest delivery. In '93, when he started selling books online, it took 7 days to get a book from Seattle to New York. Now you can get a delivery on Amazon in less than 2 hours, and they're working on drones and all the other things we know about. They continue to pursue that ideal state. Last but not least, a great example was Toyota. Toyota didn't begin as an automobile manufacturer. They started out as a loom maker. They were in the weaving business, but they learned how to become great at automation, and they ultimately said, we want to get into the automotive business. And their ideal state is a car that will never break down. Now think about that. Everyone else wants to build a car that you're going to have to get a new one about every 3 or 4 years. Toyota's goal is to build a car that will never break down, and that's why their quality exceeds anyone else in the world. So your goal as a leader is to create an ideal state, a purpose that can't be attained by any one individual, but all the generations that come after you will continue to aspire to get closer and closer to that ideal state. Bill taught me that. Potential, purpose. The third P, people. Coach John Wooden, the famous coach UCLA basketball, had a quote that still resonates with me today. A player that makes the team great is more valuable than simply a great player. A player that makes a team great is more valuable than a great player. Bill knew that. And he taught me something. He taught me that a leader had to not only recruit a team of all-stars, but then the harder work was to get them to perform as an all-star team. He used to grumble and say he hated watching the all-star games because the teams would show up with their part of their uniform and then they'd put a hat on to show that they were a part of this particular division or that division. And he said they ran the most basic plays and it was not competitive. They didn't defend each other. And he didn't like that. He didn't want a team of all-stars. He wanted an all-star team. And so the first thing he said is if you're looking for all-stars, look for these qualities: intellectual curiosity, humility, and grit. Look for those that are learn-it-alls, not know-it-alls, those who are humble enough to admit when they've made a mistake or they don't know the answer, and those who are gritty enough to overcome a setback or a failure, get up off the mat, dust themselves off, get back up, and start swinging again. Intellectual curiosity, humility, and grit. But then to get to an all-star team, he said you have to make sure they have this final quality. They prioritize we before me. Now, Bill introduced me to a video to bring that to life one time. You may have seen it. It's on YouTube. 2.5 minutes long. I encourage you to look at it, maybe even show it to people that you work with. It's called The Wisdom of Geese. In fact, scientists have studied for years why do geese fly in a V formation. And what they had discovered is that when they fly in that formation, they can travel 70% further than any one goose could fly on their own. They fly in that formation because it breaks the wind resistance for the one behind them. Just like in NASCAR, when you're dragging behind somebody, you're actually getting that resistance broken down so you can get more velocity with less fuel expended. But they also discovered something else. You might think that one in the front of the V is the leader, and they are for about 10 minutes. And then the wind resistance breaks it down so much it drops back in the flock, and another one takes the place in the leadership role. And you hear this honking all the time, and you think they must be complaining. They're not. The honking is actually a cadence, stroke, 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 so they continue to go at that pace. But perhaps the most touching of all, when you watch one goose get sick or weak and it drops down, two drop down with it to protect it from the wind until it's strong enough to get back. And together they travel 70% further, and perhaps they achieve the purpose they set out to achieve, to fly further than any one of them thought they could get there on their own. People. The fourth P, a playbook. Now, all of you who've been on the athletic fields, the courts, the swimming pools, the pitches, the baseball diamonds, all the different forms of sports that we've all played over the years, know the importance of a playbook. A playbook helps optimize an individual's abilities, but it actually helps harness the team's capability, where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. But Bill had the magic elixir when it came to a playbook. He said, narrow the focus and simplify. He would remind me all the time, when you have a complex playbook, there's too many variables, it increases the probability of error and mistakes. So keep it simple. And he used to say, put more wood behind fewer arrows. Every time I meet with him, I say, here's what I'm doing. No. More wood behind fewer arrows. Now, I actually lived this experience myself. When I was a teenager, I was practicing martial arts. On the way up the belt ranks, I got to the point where I was taking my black belt test. One of the things I had to do as a skill was to punch through a cinder block. Now, I had been a little bit of a crazy kid, and so I had many times where I broke up with a girlfriend, and I would be out there, probably Boone's Farm, Buck 99 Fifth, punch a wall, like, holy, yeah, God. And I'm thinking, now I've got to do this, and it's got to go through the brick. How do I do it? But the secret is actually this. You narrow all of your force into your first two knuckles only. Your ulna and your radius back up your first two knuckles, so you narrow all the force there, and then you only need 150 pounds of static force to break a brick. And you may say, 150 pounds? An average boxer punches at 1,000 pounds of static force. So if you focus all that energy on two knuckles, it goes through the brick. Now, how do you apply this in the business world? It's actually been proven statistically. Lean, agile manufacturing uses a technique called Six Sigma. Six Sigma has statistically proven no more than 6 variables can be proven to be causal to an outcome. Anything above 6 is only correlated at best. So that means that forget David Letterman's top 10. If you're coming up with something for your team, it needs to be 6 or fewer if you really want to see the outcome improve. But here's the extra tip. Human beings' performance actually improve if it's 3 or fewer. In fact, it's called the power of 3. And humans have learned this over centuries. That's why all the great plays have 3 acts. All the top singles on the radio repeat the chorus 3 times. And all radio jingles finish up with 650-224-6485. Call 650-224-6485. Call 650-224-6485. That's called closure. The brain has to close it out the 3rd time, and it moves it from short-term memory to long-term memory. So if you want to optimize the success of a team, have a playbook that is simple, narrow, no more than 6, preferably 3, and it'll increase the opportunities of success. Which takes me to my 5th and final P, pay it forward. Mark Twain once said the 2 most important days in your life: the day you're born, the day that you discover why. Now, discovering your why feels pretty heavy. A lot of self-assessing. If you recall, I spoke here in 2019, for those that were here, talking about discovering my why, because I had stepped down as the CEO of Intuit 2019. I wasn't sure what the next chapter would involve. So I went on a vision quest. I went out and spoke to people in their late 70s who had already reinvented themselves again, and I wanted to figure out what they could teach me. I will save you that long monologue because it was 15 minutes back then, but I did write a LinkedIn article, October of 2019. You can find it on my LinkedIn profile that laid out the questions I asked and the insights it gave me. But I can sum it up for you today. Tim McGraw's song, Humble and Kind, basically helped me figure out my why. When you get to where you're going, don't forget to turn back around and help the next one in line, and always be humble and kind. That's what Bill Campbell did. He convinced me early on that my love for my home state and my university, Marshall University, was so evident that he thought that would be a part of my future chapter. I never took this ring off from the day my mom and dad gave it to me in '96, and I've worn it every day since. And so now I had the privilege of serving Marshall University as her 38th president, the first alumni in 186 years to serve the university, and Chad is on my board of governors. So the home of Byron Leftwich and Randy Moss and Chad Pennington, I'm home again. And it means something to me because I was 6 years old when the plane crashed that took the lives that's in the movie, and it was just a mile from my home. So I remember the sirens blaring at 6. I remember the first 500 season we had in '84 when I was a junior, and now I get to come home and serve the next generation. I encourage you to read the article and take some time to figure out what your why is, because everything in life should lead you in that direction. So I'm going to wrap up. Bill was a lot of amazing things, but Bill lived these 5 principles. Help unleash potential, help people come up with a grand purpose, make sure they are not just a team of all-stars, but an all-star team, so get the right people. The 4th, make sure their playbook is narrow, simple, and clear. And the 5th is make sure they understand that it's we before me, and their job is to leave it better than they found it. My final pearl of wisdom from Bill Campbell. He said, your title makes you a manager, but the people around you will decide if you're a leader. For those of you who were the nominees and recipients of the Campbell Trophy, your GPA made you an incredible student. Your talent and your inclusion on a team made you an incredible athlete. But those 2 things and your character made you a Campbell Trophy nominee. That made you a leader amongst all other student athletes in this country. You are the best of the best. And you have an amazing platform to stand upon. And I hope you'll embrace these 5 Ps, stay true to your authentic self, and go put a dent in the universe, because the coach is watching, and I assure you right now, he couldn't be more proud than he is right now to see this group in this room. God bless you, go Herd. And with that, I'd love to take any questions. Time for some questions? A couple questions? In here?
So when you said you were trying to go seek out the people that had reinvented themselves, who were some of those people that you went and sought out, and who were the people that you first thought of to go and talk to, try to learn something from?
Yeah, so I had some hypotheses. What I think about public office, what I think about higher education. So I reached out to people like Doug Burgum, who was the governor, North Dakota, Mitch Daniels, who had moved out of governor and decided to run Purdue University, John Hennessy here at Stanford. So I reached out to a plethora of people, the co-founders of KKR, private equity, and I would go ask them, because these were people that were further along than I was in my career, and yet they had done a pretty big pivot, and they were excelling. So that's just a sampling, but I kind of put a few more of them in the article. So it starts with, I might want to do this. I'm going to talk to some people that have done it and see if it's really what I think. Any other hands up? Got one over here and one up here.
Okay, go here.
Okay, we'll go here.
Well, thank you, Mr. Smith, for coming and speaking with us. My name is Justin Holman. I went to the University of Central Florida. And I remember the first 2 summits I was here, I was in attendance, and you spoke of rubber and crystal moments.
Yes.
And I remember the first year, you were banging the table on, that was a philosophy you lived by. And then the second year, you kind of revisited it and said you had to explore that statement again in your life. When you think of rubber and crystal moments now, where does that reside for you, and why did it change?
Yeah, Justin, thank you. It's good to see you again. And UCF, man, awesome program. So for those who don't have context, I was asked about how do I think about managing my time, this notion of work-life harmony. I don't think there's anything such as work-life balance. How do you get this rhythm? And this actually was a lesson that Bill taught me. He said, first of all, there are times of war and there are times of peace. Good generals know what time it is. In times of war, you kiss your loved ones goodbye and you say, we've got work to do. Same thing happens in college. Hey, it's end of the semester, I got to write a term paper, sorry I can't go out and party. After the semester's over, you let your freak flag fly. Times of war, times of peace. But then there are moments, even in times of war, where you know a moment is made of crystal or rubber. A rubber moment's when your daughter has her 12th dance recital, which she used to have, and if I missed one because I had a board meeting, she would cry, my heart would break, but I'd drop it, it'd bounce, and next week was another dance recital, and 2 more, and she'd forget that I missed one. But if it was her homecoming, or the birth of a child, or a marriage, you drop that, it shatters, it never comes back. And I never prioritized anything over a crystal moment. The hard part is figuring out what really is crystal and rubber. Because when you have the heartstrings getting tugged and that child telling you that they really want you there, it sure feels crystal to them, and it really makes it hard. So I've gotten a little more discerning about what's crystal and rubber. And the other thing I found out is the more I can bring my wife, Elise, who's sitting right here, the First Lady of Marshall, I'm married up big time, and she is just lighting the world on fire. She's now a part of that moment with me. So when we're in war together. So I don't have to apologize to her for missing anything now because she's right there at my side, and that's probably the one new pivot. But thanks for the question. Good. Yes?
Hey, Brad. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
My name is Bobby, and I was really curious, early in your career, at some point you had to really align what your purpose was and what you wanted to have, what type of mark and impact you wanted to have on the world. Early in your career, and I'm sure that's evolved for you over the years, but early on, what do you feel like really helped you come to the conclusion on how you wanted to approach your career and, before you got to the levels that you've been able to get to?
Yeah, I will tell you, thank you for the question. I'll start by saying I really didn't know what I wanted to do. What I knew was my dad told me early on, do the thing that makes your heart beat fast. Be surrounded by people smarter than you so you can learn every day, and make sure you can pay your bills because that's an obligation. Don't ever break your promise to somebody. So I really started out with that sort of tactical guidance, and it guided me a lot of the way. And then I found a mentor who was early in my career at Pepsi who said, best way to get through life is to volunteer for the job nobody else wants. And I said, why is that? And he said, because every company's got something that's a legacy business that none of the people want to work on, and it usually has less resources than it needs, but it's still an important part of the business. And if you can go in and be scrappy and innovative and make that thing successful, and you do that 2 or 3 times, eventually you're going to become known as the go-to guy. And they'll give you something good eventually. So I've made the early part of my career volunteering for all the assignments nobody wanted. But eventually I got a plum assignment. And then I was able to really crank it up. And then the third thing was a tip I got from Meg Whitman. If anybody knows of Meg Whitman, she used to lead eBay. She ran for the governor here. She's really been an iconic leader. And she gave a speech once that said the best way to advance your career is to play golf. I thought, play golf? Man, I suck at that. She said, no, metaphorically, not literally. When you play golf, they teach you to keep your head down, to focus on your own mechanics, focus on your swing, then look up, pull the club, and do it again. You never look at how the other person's swinging, and don't look at their score. If you stay focused on your game, keep your head down, and practice on perfecting your swing, your score will get better. So those are the things I would tell you in my career that really helped me, which is find something that makes my heart beat fast, surround myself with people smarter than me, don't go for the money, just pay the bills. And then after that, those other 2 tips came along that I thought were very helpful. Volunteer for the job nobody wants, and just focus on my game. You don't make somebody else's candle glow brighter. You don't make your own candle glow brighter by blowing out somebody else's. Don't worry about who's getting promoted. Just stay on your own game. That's it. Now, I will say one last thing. I made a couple career mistakes. I joined companies for the wrong thing. I wanted the title and the money, and I would say always choose the franchise over the role. If you put yourself in a company whose value system is aligned with yours and they're going after a mission that gets you excited, the job title and the money will come. So be wary of that, because I made that mistake twice, and I had to call my dad and say, all right, you were right, I was wrong, I screwed up. I went for the money, and I was wrong. Sorry, that's a long answer, but that's sort of the anecdotes I got along the way. I think I may have time for one more, Mark, and then I'm off. Okay, one more. Thank you. No pressure. Oh, that's great.
On a personal level, like, how do you gauge success in your personal life in regards to at the end of life, when you look back, how are you, or at the end of your days, how do you gauge this was a successful day? And then in the accumulation of all of that, how are you going to look back at your life and say, this was successful, like on a personal level?
Two-part answer. One is a lesson that Bill instilled in me. You measure success through the success of the people that you touched. The thing I'm most proud of today is there are 16 CEOs of companies in the Silicon Valley that had the chance to serve with me at Intuit. Bill's number is a lot more than that. That's why they wrote the book, The $1 Trillion Coach. My legacy, I hope, is someone will say he was a champion for the overlooked and the underserved. He was a warrior for human dignity and human potential. And he leveled the playing field of opportunity for anyone who had the aspiration and the grit to try. When I pass away, if I can actually look at my wife and say, did I do it? And she says yes, it'll be a great life. God bless you. Go Herd.